Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for those of you who will watch this webinar later. I want to welcome you all to the A Better Life Together Bridge Project Wednesday webinar series. Just really quickly, I want to give our housekeeping rules, do our quick disclaimer that we're recording this webinar so that it is available on Friday afternoon along with our presenter slides. But I think I just want to get right into introductions. Anthony J. Butler, I met him many, many years ago now, and I just really admired the work that he was doing. He's been doing this nationally, also on a local level in Kansas City, Missouri. As most of you all know, I'm new to the San Diego area, new to A Better Life Together. Yesterday was my 1 year anniversary with A Better Life Together. So just really, really excited to have him here. But I want to just share a recommendation that I saw for him. Anthony Butler, founder of the V.I.P movement, that stands for Violence I Prevent, is a role model who walks his talk. He's the author of Fighting Words and encourages students and adults to build that legacy that will flourish despite opposition. Butler empowers others with skills to engage in courageous conversations through conflict mediation and positive communication skills that build teamwork. He invites students to trust their peers, adults, and themselves through activities that build confidence and collaboration. Butler provides outstanding in-services for educators. He gives teachers, administrators, and school staff skills and knowledge to support young people across socioeconomic and ethnic groups. Anthony Butler is an exemplary mentor, strong speaker, and champion motivator. And if that's not enough to get you excited about what Anthony has to share with us this morning, I don't know what is, but I want us to give a warm, we're still in the pandemic, y'all. So we're going to give a warm COVID welcome, COVID hand clap. That just means this one with this one. Don't let them touch, just wave them. Or you can, like Camille has done, you can give your emoji to clap. But this is author, motivational speaker. He's a parent motivator. He just helps us to wrap our mind around the tasks that we have to take on to improve our lives, the lives of our children, the lives of the people that will touch. So I'm excited to see what he has to share this morning. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa, and everyone in the Better Life Together family and everyone. I'm excited about this great hour that we're going to spend together. And I put in the chat quickly before we formally jump into our great topic today: when when WHEN, life hits. So if you can put in the chat for me quickly just who you are, if you want to put your title. I threw an example in there, and give me one word that you have developed over time as a parent, a word that you appreciate as a parent. And I'll put grateful as mine. Throw that in the chat, and then we'll get started. And Melissa, if you graciously could be my helpmate on the chat run.
Okay, my word was gratitude, but I can say faith, perseverance, stick to itness. Camille's was fortunate. Amen. Okay. And our CEO at ABLT said determination.
I like it.
It's Kim Mills.
Okay, and as more come in, just think in terms of this. When we developed whatever word, and I'm going to look at this from multiple lenses, but I'll start off by sharing this particular lens. Uh, Pretty much without knowing all the details and intricacies of everyone's story, the word that you appreciate that you use as a descriptive word came about when WHEN, you had a season, you had a storm, and then you decided to use that word that you put in the chat to help you win. So to win when life hits, we have to take ownership of certain words that say, even though I acknowledge that I'm in the middle of a storm, as a parent going through school starting around the nation the last week and this past week, and that right there, when you think of the word that you put in there, grateful that the kids are going back to school. And then you look at how some leveraging can be impacted when we think about that is an obstacle that we have to face. And I just love looking at life from a reflective lens and seeing how did I become grateful? Because there was a season in my life when I was more complaining, more not necessarily recognizing that even though I'm in the middle of a storm, I just decided I have to start being grateful. Because if not, when we think from a poetic lens, and I often say, question, how many negative thoughts infiltrate our minds daily? How many times will these thoughts be like crying babies? And sometimes I have to put these thoughts to sleep, lullabies. Will I believe thoughts that cause me to rise, or will I believe thoughts that cause me to lie? Many times, the thoughts that I had in the middle of a storm was causing me to lie. I used to often tell people, I'm doing well, I'm doing okay. They used to literally say, Anthony, how are you doing? And I'll say, I'm fine, I'm okay, things are going well. But I was lying to myself, putting on a mask. And to all the great parent and leaders and professionals on this particular session, I want to remind you to continue to, at the right time, with the right person, let people know how you're doing in the middle of this season. Let people know how you're doing in the middle of the parenting run. And one of the greatest ways that we can win is to begin to acknowledge that there are certain days that I'm not doing well, to be vulnerable enough to let somebody know that this particular school year starting the beginning might be a trigger for me. You know, I met Melissa at the library, and before everyone came on, I just was mentioning to her that I used to be a former educator for several years. And then in 2013, I started the V.I.P movement. And I'll never forget a story. One parent, and I just so happened to be passing through in the office. This wasn't a parent that I work with per se, but she stormed out of the office so upset. And I met her in the lobby and I didn't even know her. And I said, what's going on? And she said, I was expecting to meet with the, the principal and my child's teacher. And I show up and there's a team of people there asking me personal questions. It was supposed to be in just a quick formality meeting. And she felt that she was pretty much jumped by several other educators, and she felt that they didn't use the right decorum, that she was blindsided, and she was traumatized from that particular session. And here I am seeing the frustration and the anger. And so, long story short, I don't know the triggers that many of you might have when you think about some of the obstacles that you were facing. Your child needed a little help. You're thinking you're having an informal meeting, and then all of a sudden you see an entire IEP, individual education plan team, on the meeting, and you didn't even prepare for that. And they're asking you personal questions. So when we talk about dealing with so many things that are on our plates, I'm gonna share this screen, and I'll leave time for some interactive conversation. And I'm one of those presenters where I just enjoy from time to time. Melissa helped me out as well. If you have something you want to, just say or impart, boom, go for it. Give us a concise example. Let me share my screen with you. And then I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be able to have this great conversation. So when we think about life hitting us, and we have the situations that we deal with, our home life, I often say we have four different lives. We have public life, professional life, private life, and personal life. You'll hear me refer to the 4P lives often. So publicly, I'm just driving around, going in the grocery store, seeing people in the public sense, not to, in a sense, a relationship, just more so publicly, but that's still my public life. I'm driving through traffic, and that's a part of my life. And when life hits, and if I'm not handling that well, I find myself being snappy and agitated towards strangers, driving with a sense of recklessness because life has hit me, and I have to manage that WHEN to win. And in my professional life, it follows me. My personal life, the life that I am thinking about that is inside of my mind when I mention the thoughts, and in my private life where people who know me on a certain level get access, but all four lives interchange. So when you think about in this past season, since March 2020, just a small caption, life has been going on before March 2020. And then when we look at what's going on during since March 2020 up to present, I often think the seeds that we plant can help us to win in our minds. And we start thinking about how are we going to be better parents. Those of us who are in a marriage relationship or you're in any relationship, how are you going to be a better partner? How are you going to, in a sense, if your parents are still living, how are you going to be a better son or daughter? And all of these things are wavering, the finances, the situations at work, the relationships. And I just say it's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to grow. I'm going to share one slide and I'll come back to you and then we'll go back and forth from time to time. These are some of the, I'm going to say, predictable life hits that hit us. These are stress indicators. And if you think, how many times have you bounced back from a setback? How many times have you recovered like no other? How many times have you poured into this life of yours and so many more? And right now you need a refill. So when you look at that list, and we have three different levels: the developmental, the process of life, the existential, the purpose of life, and the situational or the POW, the suddenlies. When life hits, am I struggling with my identity? Am I struggling with who I am? Am I coming out from a situation where I'm trying to help my child form some great self-worth, but personally and privately, I'm struggling with my own self-worth? That's a life hit. Am I struggling with the value that I associate and attach to myself and the fear that I have to step out and do things that are rooted in my history? And we just think about some of the purpose side of life when we think about I'm getting older, my kids are getting older. They may or may not be out the house at a certain season, depending on the audience here. Am I struggling with a regret or buried dreams? And so life is hitting us in our mentalities, in our mindset. And then I still have to make sure that I'm okay to be a parent. Hey, stay with me on this one. I'm going a little bit further. When we think about the situational side of life, the POW, the suddenlies that occurred, when the pandemic hit, and you just think in terms of, was I prepared? Most people were not. It just in a sense, most of us were caught off guard, and we rolled up into certain stores and we're trying to get the basic necessities, and we might have gotten the news late and we found out the shelves were wiped out. When we think about March 2020, our worlds were rocked, halted exponentially. Plenty of people paused their plans and stopped. Spring break was parlayed into schools closed, lockdowns, what in the world on lock, toilet paper and paper towel out of stock, Zoom into meetings, emotions seeping inward, downward spirals, videos going viral, time passing, tick tock. And while this time is passing, we're thinking about the others. When you look at caring for the death, caring for your own kids, or maybe grieving the death of a loved one, these are life hits. Family members leaving home, life hits. Changes in schedules. Somebody might have had a new addition to the family, and that is another indicator of a life hidden. Major marital relationships or relationships in terms of dating or intimate situations. And we're looking at financial challenges. So when you look at that list: unemployment, underemployment, struggling with eviction, unresolved conflicts, should I send my child to school in a mask? What do I feel about masks, vaccinations, unvaxxed? We have all of this going on. My employer said, hey, I got to get this. And so the next thing you know, it affects all generations. And as a parent, and as we're pouring into those who are looking to us, we have so many different life hits. I want to pause for the calls and get back to you. I want to hear from you right quick where it says, let's chat it up, other hits in life. How do you manage when life hits? What do you do to make sure that you are present and powerful enough to help your child? Let me get a couple of people to share. What do you do when life is hitting that strong to make sure that you're present and powerful enough to impart some things into your child? And I got a hand up. Throw your hand up if you want to share. Put it in the chat. Melissa is helping me on the ones and twos. Thank you so much.
I mean, I'll go first. The only thing that I got is the thing that I've always had, prayer.
Hmm.
I fast a lot, and I just, I turn to my words. Sometimes it's just, opening my Bible, and I know I'm in a different setting, but sometimes it's just opening my Bible, and whatever is there, I just try to meditate on that. Um, Aside from that, we hear these buzzwords like just self care, just a long shower. like, sometimes that's all you can do. That's all you can afford to do. Kim, our fearless leader, said prayer. Regina said prayer, another one of our fearless leaders. Camille said prayer and unplug. Yes, unplugging is mandatory.
For me, I kind of I focus on the positive things that I have going on, the good things that are happening in my life, and I look at those and what it could be and how I got to that positive place, and I focus on that and remind me of what my goal is and what I'm doing, and this is just a moment in time that's not the best, but I look at what I do have and what I'm grateful for and how I got those things and how I got there. Um,
And thank you all for sharing, and feel free to keep dropping it in the chat. And I just think about, in this particular space, those of us in this session right now, and we have all been witnesses in terms of sometimes we're out, and I'll say going back to the 4P life type of analogy I use, say publicly, and you're in a grocery store and you see somebody quote unquote lose it. And they kind of just, like, wow, why are they tripping? Because they didn't have Captain Crunch or cereal in the aisle. And then when you start thinking about it on a deeper level, life was swirling. And that was the tipping point. And one of the ways that we win when life hits is to recognize there's a certain level of anger, and we feel anger rising, the secondary emotion. But primarily, if I keep, in a sense, ignoring those root level reasons, it causes a rise in the emotion. Life hits us to where sometimes we're snapping in traffic, or honking our horn, or cussing people out in the wind as you're driving, or doing all sorts of different things, because life in a sense is swirling. It's not the fact that that driver just jumped in front of you or didn't signal. There are indicators that other things are going on. And from my heart to yours, to everybody on this call, when we think about how have I been managing when life hits, WHEN, so that I can win better. Many times as a parent, I had found myself apologizing after the fact until I've set up a plan in place ahead of time, where because something happened in a different form of life, you at home with your family, you might be a little bit snappy with your own kids or whoever you're, living with or married to or dating, or in any situation in your house. Those in close proximity to us often get the overflow of our mismanagement. And I want to share some tips in terms of when that occurs. Number one, don't beat yourself up. Give yourself grace. Humble yourself. And if you have to apologize, absolutely. I've heard before the best apology is change behavior. And so if I come to you and say, I apologize for snapping at you with some stuff that went on at work or some stuff that went on outside of this, or maybe you're dealing with one of those situational piles in life. I just had my cell phone stolen, or whatever the case may be, and I found myself being agitated. Own up to it and give yourself and others grace in your inner circle, because those are the ones that usually feel it. And then also give yourself the opportunity. When Camille mentioned unplug, from time to time, whatever works for you, so that you can be refreshed and refueled and replenished, to be able to go back out, and you have gained traction and grown a certain level when you're put back in a similar situation and you pass that test. That is a win, WIN. That is a win. And so if you're on this particular session right now and you just experienced something that I laid out, give yourself grace. Give yourself unmerited favor. Give yourself the opportunity to say, I messed up. We all mess up. I'm going to make it right. I'm going to have a conversation with somebody and let them know, don't take it personal. I'm not going to make excuses. And when I'm put in a similar situation again, I'm not going to treat you the way that I just treated you. The best apology is change behavior. The best apology. And so when you think about all of these lives and the swirling, and we look at our mentality and our mindset, I say often, and this is the National Science Foundation that I'm citing on this. The average person has between 12 to some data sets between 12 and 120,000. Some say 12 to 70,000. I'll just say, just to give a number, about 50,000 thoughts per day. And we think about those 50,000 thoughts per day. If we're not careful, most of our thoughts, 80%, will veer towards negativity. About 95% of what we do in our thought process, we have the same exact same thoughts as the same day before. So when I'm thinking about trying to change and be a winner in the situational and the existential and the developmental process of life hitting me all over the place, look no further than my mindset, my mentality. How do I manage my thoughts? How do I manage my self talk? What am I saying to myself in the middle of all of these storms? Right now, we're thinking and having dialogues with ourselves. During the next, I'll just say, I'm on my shot clock to be active, say during the next maybe 35 to 40 minutes that I'll be with you, we're processing and we're having so many thoughts. And so when you think about that thought process, and we ask ourselves often, how am I doing? Am I being dishonest with myself? How can I change my thoughts to be vulnerable enough, starting with myself first, to say, you know what, I'm not doing well? Who can I reach out to in my inner circle? What can I do so that I can at least acknowledge that I'm not doing well? Prior to jumping on here, I had a call with someone that I care about often, and they were just basically saying all of the things that are going on in life is causing me to have some mental health concerns. And they sent a text and definitely was praying for them and things like that. So let me pause before I jump back to my slides and just think about what you're thinking about. And I'll say that again. Think about what you're thinking about during this season of life. School starting back. Maybe you're just coming off your vacation run and you're in that getting up into the summer, going into the fall, and all of these different types of scenarios that are kind of repetitive in our cycle of life. Think about what you're thinking about. How are you really doing? Not just how you doing that we say as a greeting. How are you really doing? And if you're not doing well, you don't have to go into detail. Do you have a few go-to people who can help you to be the great parent, the great professional, the great sibling, the great whatever fill in the blank you are? Do you have people you can go to who will speak life into your life when life is hitting? I'll pause and hear from you. How are you doing? How are you really doing? Let me hear some general feedback from some people.
Oh Lord. um, it's back to school, and
Mm,
just to keep it all the way 100, back to school is a trigger for me, being, a parent of an individual with a disability. Um, Talking with parents of individuals with disabilities, because I know that we are all like in the thick of it, and we're all making decisions for their education, for, like me, transition planning. Everything matters right now, and it's never a one size fits all situation. It's not a pair of pants that fits everybody. Um, so it's incredibly stressful. I can't even lie. It's incredibly stressful, and, you know, yeah, it takes a lot of prayer and a lot of self care, a lot of fasting, a lot of just, like Stacia said, being grateful for the positives. Um, so far, so good for me, but there are people who we talk to who are not doing well, and you just feel a responsibility to help, you know.
Thank
So
you for that, Melissa. Thank you for that. Like, how are you doing? How are you really doing? And if you got to go to, who you go to get some refueling? Anyone else want to share before we go forward? Put it in the chat.
I do.
Go for it.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Good morning, everyone.
Good
For
morning.
me, I I had to separate from very toxic people.
Mm.
God gave me the strength to do that because I had to put my child and myself first. When I first read the list of issues that you mentioned, I felt my chest pounding, like, because it almost all of it applied. And so I'm in a better place. I attend mass every morning, almost every morning. And I drop off my child at the school right next to the church. And I thank the Lord because I can now open envelopes, and I'm just dealing with one day at a time. Just that's how I'm doing it. And I feel very blessed because at least my mind is working. So, and I I noticed that learning more about weeding out stuff, bad stuff, negative thoughts, and self-pity and all that, and finding the right and the professional support really helps to help me heal, one layer at a time, because I was feeling very overwhelmed and I was not functioning, and I was pretending I was okay so my child wouldn't notice, but my child would immediately say, "Mom, why are you sad?" And so I just had to be very honest with him. I feel sad, just in very general terms, because sometimes I feel like things are totally out of control. And so he would give me a hug, or, I would notice, he was feeling very sad and nobody wanted to talk about it. But we lost our dog of, 14 years of age recently. I buried him, and I thought that my son would not bring it up so often because he seemed to do well. We both cried and he seemed to be doing well, but every day we miss him. And he tells me, "Mom, I miss our doggy." And so we give each other hugs. And so we are just here for each other. And, whatever God brings into my life, he'll give me the strength to, now I can say it with more confidence that I will be able to handle it. But there were those days where I knew God was walking with me every step of the way, but it was, I had to like literally stop doing a bunch of stuff and just give my body rest and start walking, eating better, all those things that I needed to do. But thank you for listening.
And thank you for sharing. And sorry for your loss. And pets are family to many people as well. And to acknowledge that. And again, every single rectangle square on this session, life is hitting right now. Personally, privately, publicly, professionally, it's hitting on so many different levels. And how do we win when life hits? And I'm seamlessly dropping some of them in here. And the overarching greatest thing takeaway that I want to share with you is examine your self-talk. Examine what are you saying to yourself, because we know our thoughts impact our words and our actions and our character, and then be okay enough from a self-talk angle to say, if I'm not doing well, here are some people that I can go to that and it's reciprocal in great relationships. There are times you're going to pour into their lives, and then there are other times where they're going to be pouring into your life. And it's just thinking in terms about, if I'm not okay, do I have a person or two? And if I feel I don't have a person, do I have a professional that I can speak with until I can get some people? And you can have professional and personal relationships that help you in those particular seasons where it seems like this storm is too much. It is too much. Anything on the chat, Melissa, before I go forward?
I just wanted to chime in before you move forward. I think it's such a great question to ask ourselves every day. I don't always do that. And then you're just off the whole day, not really realizing, how are you doing? So, and then it's the negative self-talk. Over the years, I've had to really work on that, because I'm harder on myself than everybody else is. And it's like, you know, if I need a day off or half a day, or just I need to just sit down, I'm not lazy. I just need to rest. And so I've worked. That's a constant struggle. Like, have a seat, like, rest, take a nap. It's okay. And I'm getting up thinking, oh man, I should have done. And it's like, no, just your body needed to rest. Your mind needed to take some time off. Be kind to yourself. So I have to constantly tell myself that, be kind to yourself. You put on some pounds because of the pandemic, whatever. So what? You ate real good. That food was real good, right? Pull out those bigger shirts. It's okay. It's weight. It'll go down. You know, all that, you know what I'm saying? All of that. But I don't take the time to check in with myself daily. And I think that's such an important concept, because I might be triggered by something somebody says, or I'm gonna react a certain way. And it's like, what is it about them that has me all out of sorts? So just important, it's an important question to ask every day. So thank you for encouraging that.
You're welcome. And thank you again for sharing as well. Hey, you know, you always come with a plan, but you got to call audible. And so the audible is that this is such an important piece of the presentation. You'll have access to the PowerPoint slides, notes, and all of that. But if there's a segment to camp out a few minutes longer, I am all about that, because our self-talk and our dialogue, our inner dialogue, sets the tone for everything, for how I view myself, how I view others. If we know the research and the data suggests, and do your own fact checking in your own life, that the majority of our thoughts drift towards negativity. And we have these automatic negative thoughts, in the psychological sense, the ants. And so I have to check myself before I wreck myself, because negativity will take over, and it will come out in our interpersonal relationships. But before it comes out in our interpersonal relationships, I'm beating myself up on the inside. And I got to have that me versus me battle. Because if I'm saying negative things about myself, it will play out in my nonverbal cues, in my body language. And there are times our kids, we didn't even say anything, and we make a face, or we just position our body a certain way, and they're like, oh, here they go again. And vice versa, they do the same thing to us. And so in every relationship, nonverbal cues, number one way people communicate. I'll pause again before I go further. Anybody else, while we're here and the water is stirred, you want to jump in, self-talk? What do you say to yourself? How you doing? How you really doing? Okay. All right. Melissa, you want to blow up the chat, and then I'll set this slide up as you blow up the chat. Anybody put anything in there? Okay.
Not as of yet, no.
Okay, I'm going back to the mighty screen share. So those are the life hits. Now here's the thing that I'm going to accentuate a little bit more. When people die before their time, it's because they didn't manage these. These are stress indicators, and there are more. I just gave a general list. So when you look at all of these stress indicators, and life is hitting on this level, and many of us can relate to many of the hits, but we lose our life our immune system breaks down. I like what was said earlier about getting rest, because resting alone, if you're looking for a win-win strategy, getting the proper rest, the proper exercise, the proper amount of sleep, giving ourselves opportunity to refuel, and replenish is what I often say, the R's. It actually helps me to deal with the life hits. It helps me to deal with the life hits. And so unresolved conflicts with many, that's another one on there. I mentioned earlier about thoughts, and I'm just gonna just have this slide shared with in terms of our thoughts impact our decisions. We have thousands of thoughts per day. The majority of our thoughts are negative. About half of what we do is habitual. So if I ever want to change and have a breakthrough and start winning in life, I got to check my habits. And so about 50% of what I do, I'm on automatic. From the way I speak, to the way I move, to the way I follow through, to the way I procrastinate or don't procrastinate. If I want to challenge myself and begin to change in a better way, and I like to, better life together all day, every day, that's just such a great title. If I want to have a better life together, I got to start changing my habits individually so that I can move forward together with the children who are looking to us. And many times there are some people on this particular session. Not only are you raising your own kids, you could be caring for your parents. They call it the sandwich impact. And there are several people, the percentages are growing where you're taking care of your school age kids, college age kids, making sure that they're okay. Then it's also you're playing honor and reverence to your parents who are in the final season of their life. And that's a lot going on. And I have to start looking at my habits, my decisions that I make, and we make about 35,000 decisions per day. And I start saying often, one day, one decision will change everything. I got my social media icon up there. When you think about how people are playing out, and we know many times the social media people put their best life out there. But many times you might find some people being transparent and dropping nuggets. So just looking at social media with a different lens and a different set of eyes, you'll see a lot of these life hits that we're talking about playing out in so many different ways. And then to ask the question, did something happen? How can I help you? And to ask yourself that question first. We've been taught and conditioned oftentimes to ask others, but ask ourselves, something happened today? Why I'm feeling sad, depressed, down? Why I'm feeling angry? Why am I afraid? Anthony, is something going on? I'm having that dialogue with myself. And then I'll ask Anthony, how can I help you? And then I'll go back to the word we put in the chat first. Me being grateful is warfare language to me because it helps me to look at my situation differently. I'm acknowledging that I'm going through. And when we talk about how do we win, WIN, I just say the relationship piece. The relationship piece. When you look at certain aspects of what great parents do, and you can reflect on your life when you were coming up in your preteens, adolescence, childhood, and you start seeing a transformation. My mother did the best she could. My father had straight A's. He was alcoholic, abusive, angry, and absent. So there was no relationship building with him. My self talk often in my formative years, all the way up into pretty much, I'll say, my early 20s, was rooted in rejection based off what I felt for him. And I used to ask myself the negative question often, did I do something wrong? Why did he leave? Why did he even do this or do that? And I had to start switching the questions and being, you know what? I'm grateful. Maybe there were some things going on in his life that I didn't need in my life. Of course, I wish I would have had my dad around. But then I start thinking about, I'm grateful that I didn't get exposed to that anger, to that alcohol, to all of those negativities that he had going on in his life, the abuse as well towards my mother and other people. And when you think about that and we start building relationships, here are some indicators here in terms of great ways to build relationships with our kids. We're looking back over our life. I'm in the yellow up top, but we're looking back over our lives, and we're thinking about, and I'll slide this over just a little bit so you can kind of see. So we're looking back over our lives, reflecting, seeing how far we have come, what went well that our parents imparted into us, what could they have done better based off their situation. If you are the oldest child, or you were the youngest, you were the firstborn. Raise your hand right quick. I'm curious. How many of you were the oldest? Okay. Okay, not too many people. All right. When you think about being the oldest, I always say you're the experiment one. And so your parents get better through time, and they get better in many cases with that if they change their the way that they're doing certain things. But listen to our kids. Laugh with them, learn with them and from them. Let them know that you love them. Have legacy language. We're talking about this now because there's going to come a point in your life where I'm going to be dependent on you. You're dropping legacy language nuggets. And then I'll go through my 1 through 10, and then I'll come back to you right quick. I'll go real quick on some of these. I might skip a couple, but help our kids identify their role in society. If you want to build relationships, you start speaking life to them. Like, you're a gifted writer. I can see you writing books. I can see you helping people. Whatever it is, you're helping them identify their role. You are a problem solver. You got a quick sense of humor, and I see you are a helper. And you're giving them some foundations to build their role. Learn where they're coming from. Many times, this generation, Generation Z, and we think about where they're coming from the tech generation. Their interpersonal skills in general are not as strong as older generation, because they do a lot of not necessarily face-to-face dialogues, a lot of texting, a lot of, in a sense, being hidden behind the technology piece. And so learn that where they're coming from, that certain things are kind of distant that we kind of grew up with. I'm Generation X. And then each passing generation, you see some overall traits of your generation, but learn where they're coming from. I'm going to say, share your story in appropriate and authentic ways. And I'll pause after this one. I'm not going to go through all 10, but you'll have access to it. But being able to tell our kids what it was like, I share my story with our son and daughter of how we grew up, of how we had to go through certain storms. And based off the age and stage of your life, you can go into more detail and more nuances. But when you're sharing your story, you're building relationship. You're building relationship. And so let me pause on this, and then I'm gonna set up this next slide. Those are C life skills, and I'll come back to that on the other side of this. But I'll come back to you in terms of building relationship. Help us to win. Building relationship with those in our house helps us to win. Building relationship with those who care for our kids help us to win. And so let me hear from a couple of people right quick in terms of what are some of your relationship building tips or insights that you would share that you know are proven, tried, and true that will help us to build relationships to be able to win when life hits. Anybody got something that they do to help them build quality relationships with their kids or with the people who, in a sense, have access to our kids? Any relationship tips? And put them in the chat too.
Yes, all my kids are grown now, but being open and honest with them. I grew up, my parents are older. They've passed away, but it was like just parent stuff. Adult stuff is adult stuff, and kids, they didn't really share stuff. And as they got older and I got older, they began to share stuff, especially with my father. So that kind of taught me to be open with your kids. If I'm struggling, going through some stuff, I just had had some situations, and at one point it was just like, let me just tell you what's going on with me. And it really changed the relationship between me and my sons. Wow. And now we talk about everything, whatever they're going through, I talk whatever I'm going through. There's still a healthy respect of me being their mom, but we could just talk about stuff, and it's just opened up the door for our relationship to become more and more closer.
I like that open and honesty and having conversation. I like that when mama becomes one of their BFFs.
Right. It's cute. They actually like hanging with me. They actually like hanging out with me, which is cool.
They hiding from us to now hanging out with us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, for myself, I'm an 80s baby, so I grew up in a home where, you know, my father, he worked, he grew up without his father. So he had it in his head that he was never going to leave his family. He provided for us. He took care of us. My mother, she worked. So we always had everything that we needed and a lot of the things that we wanted. But like I said, I grew up in a time where it seemed like that was important. I take care of my kids. I go to work. I don't, you know, my mom and dad, they didn't hit each other. They weren't drinking, you know, we went to church, but there was a lot of like, you know, don't have sex and don't do this and do this and go to school. And there was never really a conversation, you know, like, well, don't have sex because this is like, they didn't want to go too deep. And so for myself, you know, times are different. I have a daughter, she's 12, she'll be 13 in November. This was her first, she was started middle school 2 weeks ago, you know, so I was like, oh my God, middle school is scary. I have a son he's in the 4th grade. I have a 19-month-old. And so, you know, just having real honest conversations on their level, the conversation I would have with my 12-year-old daughter, I wouldn't have with my 4th grader. So just knowing the difference in conversations, but being honest with her, you know, just a one-on-one, like, listen, you going to middle school, boys, they gonna try this, girls are gonna try this, the conversation on friendship, you know, if girls are acting this way with you in private and then they're acting like this, you know, like you pay attention to everything. I think just being honest with our kids and giving them the spectrum of everything, how to build relationships, warning signs. I told her, if it doesn't feel right in your gut, it ain't right. You know, don't try nothing, you know, just those conversations that our parents are just like, don't do drugs, don't do, well, no, why? What happens if I do try something that a friend has offered me? Like, what could happen? And so that's, you know, that's the method that I take with my kids. And so far it's working. Sometimes I'm a cool mom and sometimes I'm annoying. They don't like me and I don't care. They're 12 and 9. And so I know that at some point, one day they will appreciate, you know, how I am with them now. So I say just like keeping that open communication and being honest.
Okay, that's great nuggets dropped on that one. I saw Camille was chiming in as well. Camille.
I totally agree with both. Is it Avon?
Avon.
Avon. Okay. I have, so it's interesting. I put in the chat that I connect on a person level first. It's like respecting the humanity in people and knowing that we are all people and even my little people are people. So it's like I have ranges in my children. So I have a 23-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 6-year-old. So I'm like all up in everybody's wheelhouse, right? So with my 23-year-old, we talk different. And I was a teen mom with him. And so I learned a lot. We learned a lot together. But I began just as watching him grow up, I'm like, he's a person, like he's a little person, like these little feelings are significant, they matter. And the things that I think aren't important, like, okay, so I made you throw away your broken, you know, transformer. So what? You know, you're fine. You know, for him, it's like, oh my God, my world is ending right now. You know, so I have to deal with my children knowing that these things pass, but I have to respect the humanity in you first. We're going to have a conversation about it. You might walk away like, oh, I feel better, and we're still throwing away that toy, but we're okay. You come away getting out whatever that was in. And I think a lot of times we discount the value of just connection, just connecting with people first. And so for me, that's what's been helpful, is connecting with my children and connecting with people on a person level, even those that have bad attitudes. Like if we connect on a person level, I pretty much got you from there. So it's like we just connect on that person and respecting the humanity level.
Hey, thank you, Camille and Vaughn for sharing that. And when you think about in a most basic way, we didn't pick our parents, we didn't pick our names, we didn't pick the stage and age that we were born into. We didn't have a say on the first home environment that we had in terms of did I grow up in a nice home or did I grow up in the projects? First schools, we didn't pick, we had very little say as we went through life at that particular stage. And then when we reflect back on it, when you talk about great conversation starters, having a conversation with our kids about, and I thought it was just so funny, you know, my wife and I having a conversation with our son and daughter one time, just letting them know how did we get our names, and this is why we named you. And our son's name is Brandon, and we said, look, we were watching A Young and the Restless, and there was a character named Brandon, and that's how you became Brandon. We like the name Brandon, and so and he thought it was like, and so just building that relationship to where if you can have lighthearted conversations. And I like what both Yvonne and Camille said, and many of you are putting in just throughout, just being so empathetic and personable. That when you do have those deeper level conversations, to give the why behind your particular reasoning helps our children to respect us more. I'm not just saying a list of don'ts. I'm giving you the keys to the kingdom of understanding my philosophy, why, and I'm sharing transparently, this is why. Because legacy language is, I want to be able to go to your graduation. I want to be able to go to your marriage. I want to be able to come to over your house for dinner. I want to be able to raise you so well that your grandkids coming up to me and they're just saying, how was my daddy when he was little? You know, just whatever the situation may be. We want to speak and impart legacy language into those in whatever phase they're in the spectrum of parenting, the spectrum. I'm going to share this thing for the last time, and then it'll be, I'm telling you, we have some good conversation. It'll be closeout time, Melissa. I'm telling you, it's flying through. It's flying through. C skills for life. These are just, I just love alliteration and wordplay. And many times when you're having those win-win conversations, oftentimes critical thinking, complex problem solving, creative thinking, etc., are not formally taught in our schools. So we have to go out of our way and talk about these things. If we're going to say, I want you to be a collaborator, we have to give examples and highlight the C's for life. Conflict resolution is not a given that somebody has great conflict resolution skills. So these C's for life, you'll get the slide and you can kind of go into that a little bit more. These are over the last 70 years, and I kind of tweaked it a little bit. Great parents do these intentional traits. And again, you'll have the slides, but they model by our body language, word, and action. They love unconditionally. We speak language of there is nothing you can do that will stop me from loving you. And think in terms of intentional parenting, helping number 6, our kids to foster their independence, avoiding humiliation and harsh discipline because we might win the battle but lose the war. If we have been humiliated so bad, there are certain parents, and my heart goes out if this is any of you. Uh, if the relationship has been so soured by something that happened years ago because they were humiliated, don't beat yourself up. You're at a different place now. Give yourself grace and keep reaching out and extending the hand of peace from time to time, and let your child know in a transparent way that I didn't handle that situation well. I've learned something from it. I love you. I would like to, be able to allow that healing to take place. Uh, and I like, again, Camille mentioned something about the humanity, treating our kids with respect. There are times in our lives where our kids will see us treat other people's kids with so much respect. They'll look at one another, particularly if they got siblings, and say, "Whose daddy is this? Whose mama is this?" Because they don't see it out. They see it with other people, but not within the house. So being consistent, number 7, and these right here, another alliteration. When we win, think in terms of the first 4 are things that help us manage stress, avoiding unnecessary stress. Sometimes we have to recognize that there are certain crises that is not ours. We have to let go and let God and let other people handle that. Quit intervening so much because it's going to put more on our plate. Alter situations that we can change, number 2. There are certain situations that we can change. I can change my schedule. I can change how much time I'm spending on social media, going back and forth with other people's drama. I can change so many different things. So remember, there are some things that we can change. Adapt to the stressor, this job, this relationship, this fill in the blank. Sometimes we are allowing certain stressful situations to get in our home and our parenting that we don't have to continue to allow. Maybe at the right time, at the right season, with the right exit plan, you need to leave that job because that job is causing your temporary expiration date, seasonal years of parenting to suffer. And sometimes we have to start weighing, is it more important for me to be working or should I start trying to get an exit plan? I'm not saying quit your job tomorrow, but I'm saying if you recognize that that is destroying your parenting and that relationship, we have to start weighing priority wise. I might have to adapt to this one. And then accept the things you can't change. Accept the things you can't change. There are several other A's on there. Last slide, and I'm coming back to the full screen, just the last one. When we think of a genogram and we start looking at patterns in our bloodline and we start seeing certain things in terms of my daddy dealt with this, or the men in the family dealt with this, or the women in the family dealt with this, I can begin to start winning and breaking that cycle. Again, my father was alcoholic, angry, abusive, and absent. And most of the men in my family had that same A echoing in a negative way. And when I started looking at different aspects of what was going on in my bloodline, I told myself, in my self-talk first, I'm gonna break this pattern. And I want our kids to be able to have some winners when life hits. I'm not going to resort to being angry. I'm not going to resort to alcohol. I'm not going to resort to being an abusive person. I'm not going to resort to humiliation and abandonment and etc. So when we think about when life hits, think in terms of what's going on in the bloodline. Think in terms of how I can look back over my past. Think in terms of those A's that I listed, and think in terms of giving myself grace. My self talk should be, I messed up at times, but I'm going to get back up and try again. And so, Melissa, I'm going to turn it back over to you, being very cognizant of the time. And then I'll let you do whatever closing words. But hey, this has been a great session. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my wonderful Wednesday with all of you. Melissa, thank you for the invite, and so thankful to meet many of you in a virtual space. Thank you.
I just want to, before I say anything else, if we can do another pandemic clap to thank Mr. Butler. I do want to acknowledge just a comment from our chat. Miss Alvarez said that she's finding that it becomes more difficult for her to rebound after a setback. Her resiliency is weakening and she's no longer optimistic. So I just want to pause and just say, I'm personally praying with you for whatever your needs are. If there's any way that any of us from the Bridge Project can assist you with what you're dealing with for your child, or if there's resources, people that we can connect you to, we are here and we are available to do that. Ms. Alvarez, just before you go, I'm going to share my mobile number. Feel free to text. I'm going to share my email. You can call, you can text, you can email, whatever you feel most comfortable with. But we want to follow up with you and check on you. And Ms. Ornelas, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If there's any way that we can assist you, we definitely want to stay connected and do that. It's just an open line to reach out to us with what your needs are. If we can't immediately assist you, if we need to connect you with whatever resource or support, we are here to do that. That is what the Bridge Project is for. But just an amazing session. I don't know if this has helped anyone else, but it's definitely helped me. I appreciate you, Mr. Butler. I appreciate everyone that was on and contributed and was transparent and open. Thank you all so much. I do look forward to sharing these slides and sharing the replay here um, on our website. We are going to also be linking to Mr. Butler's site so that you can connect with him for his books, which are amazing. And I don't want to misquote. If you can hop in, Anthony, the C. I'm looking forward to that book, the Common Sense book, when that drops. What is the title of this book that is coming?
It's out now. Who canceled Common Sense?
Oh,
It's a
yes.
pocket-sized book. And it's just a great read, quick read, pocket size, deal with 30 questions, who canceled Common Sense. And yeah, I'll be getting great feedback from it.
Yes, I'm excited to get that myself.
Okay.
All right. Oh,
And I just want to say one thing to Miss Alvarez. Miss Alvarez, as a woman, women, you're not alone. We understand. We've all felt a way that you're feeling right now. Don't give up. In the chat, maybe give us your information so that we can reach out to you. And I appreciate you opening up, being open and honest with us about how you're feeling and what's going on with you. But definitely, if you want to give us your information so we can reach out to you so that we can help you in, the best that we can. But we definitely feel you and we understand, and we want to help you. So if you don't mind giving us your phone number or email so that we can reach out to you.
And thank you for that, Ivana. And again, Miss Alvarez as well. That took a lot of heart and bravery. So I
Yeah.
wanted to compliment you for being brave enough to let people know how you're really doing. And you got a group of people who are willing to help. So thank you for that. And Melissa, follow up and let me know any way, any resources, any way that we can help out as well. Well,
absolutely.
it is, what time is it on the Pacific Coast, on the left coast?
It's 11:02. It's 11:02. This was amazing. Thank you again.
From the Midwest, have a wonderful Wednesday. West Coast people was nice. Was nice. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Melissa.
Bye. Thank you.
All right. All right. Bye.